The world we live in is louder than ever. Each morning begins not with peace, but with a buzzing phone, flashing screens, and the heavy weight of unfinished tasks waiting to be done. Stress builds before the day has even begun. For many, it feels like being trapped on a treadmill that never slows down, where no matter how fast you run, the finish line moves further away. In this constant rush, our minds rarely rest. We are pulled by money worries, tangled relationships, endless responsibilities, and a quiet but relentless voice that whispers, "You are not enough." This is the pain of modern living, and it has become so normal that most of us forget life was never meant to feel this way. We chase success, believing it will bring relief. Yet the moment we reach one milestone, another appears. We look for happiness in relationships, but often end up feeling misunderstood, lonely, or burdened by conflict. We try to buy our way to peace, filling our homes with objects, our calendars with distractions, and our minds with noise, only to feel emptier than before. Anxiety rises like a storm within us, leaving us restless at night and tired in the morning. And perhaps the deepest pain of all is the quiet despair that whispers in the background. Is this all there is? But there is another way. A path that does not ask you to abandon your life, your dreams, or the people you love, but instead invites you to see them differently. A path not built on striving, but on understanding. Not on controlling, but on letting go. For thousands of years, the teachings of the Buddha have offered a light to those lost in suffering. A reminder that peace is not something you earn, but something you uncover. It is already here, hidden beneath the layers of worry, fear, and longing. This journey is not about religion in the strict sense. It is not about rituals, robes, or distant monasteries. It is about the human heart and the struggles we all share, whether in the crowded streets of New York, the quiet suburbs of California, or anywhere in the world. The truth of suffering is universal, and so is the possibility of freedom. These teachings are not abstract philosophy. They are practical tools designed for everyday life for the stressed worker, the overwhelmed parent, the lonely soul scrolling through their phone at midnight. What you are about to hear is not a lecture, but a story. A story of pain and release, of the endless cycle of struggle and the surprising doorways that lead us out of it. Each part will speak to a wound you already know: stress, money, relationships, anxiety, the search for meaning. But each part will also offer a key, drawn from the wisdom of the Buddha, to unlock the possibility of peace. Imagine this. Instead of being crushed by the weight of life, you learn to carry it with grace. Instead of fighting change, you flow with it. Instead of clinging to control, you discover the strength of letting go. This is not weakness. It is not escape. It is the deepest kind of courage to face life as it is and still find freedom in the middle of it. And so, as we begin, let this be more than words you hear. Let it be a journey you take with your whole heart. Because at the end of this path, there is not just relief from pain, but a profound joy, a kind that arises when you realize you no longer have to run, you no longer have to fight, and you no longer have to prove yourself. Peace is here, waiting, and together we will learn how to touch it. For much of our lives, we have been told a story. The story goes like this: if you work harder, if you plan better, if you control more, you will finally find peace. You will reach the moment where the weight lifts, where everything falls into place, where your heart can rest. It sounds convincing, doesn't it? It sounds like the voice of every teacher, every parent, every advertisement, and every culture that tells you, push harder, hold tighter, take control. And so we listened. We clenched our fists. We braced ourselves against the uncertainty of life. We pushed rivers in directions they never wanted to flow. But what happens after years of pushing? What happens when the fists grow tired, when the heart grows weary, when the spirit begins to sag under the weight of constant effort. We find ourselves exhausted, yet strangely empty. We did everything we were told, yet peace still escapes us. If you have ever lain awake at night, your chest tight with worry about tomorrow, your mind replaying every mistake of yesterday, you know this pain. If you have ever felt that despite all your effort, life still slips through your hands like water, you know this struggle. There is a cruel irony in the way most of us live. The tighter we hold on, the more we lose. The more we try to control, the less control we feel. The more we resist uncertainty, the more it surrounds us like fog. This is the illusion of the tightly held fist, the belief that strength is found in gripping harder, when in truth, strength is often found in the courage to release. Think of a child clutching sand at the beach. The more they squeeze, the faster the grains spill out between their fingers. But if they relax their hand, if they cup it gently, the sand rests there without effort. Life is no different. We clench because we fear loss. We clench because we want certainty. We clench because we were told that only through effort will we earn safety. But the clenched fist is not strength. It is fear disguised as control. The Buddha once said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. In the same way, clinging to control burns us from the inside. We grip so tightly to outcomes, to people, to identities, that we end up consumed by the very tension we hoped would save us. Modern life only makes this worse. Every day we are fed messages that tell us we must do more, be more, achieve more. Success is measured in numbers. How many followers? How many dollars? How many trophies? How many boxes checked off the endless to-do list? We scroll through images of people who appear to have it all, and we clench harder, convinced that if we just push a little longer, we too can arrive at that perfect life. But here is the truth that few dare to say. The perfect life you imagine does not exist. The image is a mirage, and the more you chase it, the thirstier you become. This endless chase is what Buddhists call tanha craving, the desperate reaching for something outside yourself to complete you. We believe peace lies just one step further. One more promotion, one more purchase, one more relationship, one more achievement. Yet every time we arrive, the satisfaction dissolves like smoke. The fist tightens again, reaching for the next thing. And in this cycle, exhaustion becomes our constant companion. But there is another way to live. Imagine, for a moment, opening your hand. Imagine letting go of the need to control every outcome, to predict every twist in the road. Imagine breathing deeply and realizing that peace is not found at the destination, but in the way you walk the path. This is the wisdom of letting go, not abandoning your life, not giving up on your dreams, but loosening your grip enough to actually live them. There is a river near a small village in Asia where children often swim. One day, a boy was caught in the current. He thrashed, fought, and gasped, certain he would drown. The more he resisted, the weaker he became. But then, an elder shouted from the shore, "Stop fighting the water. Let it carry you." The boy, desperate, let go of his struggle. And to his surprise, the current carried him safely downstream to a calm place where he could stand again. This is the lesson. Sometimes fighting life drowns us, but surrender carries us to safety. We mistake surrender for weakness. We confuse letting go with laziness. But letting go is not the absence of effort. It is the presence of wisdom. It is knowing the difference between what is in your hands and what never was. It is choosing to place your energy where it matters, your actions, your words, your kindness, while releasing what cannot be forced, the outcomes, the reactions of others, the tides of the future. If you pause and look at your own life, you may notice the many fists you carry. Perhaps one is clenched around money, the fear of losing it, the constant hunger for more. Perhaps one is clenched around a relationship, The desperate hope that someone will never leave you, never change, never disappoint you. Perhaps one is clenched around your own identity, the need to prove yourself as capable, successful, worthy. Each of these fists grows heavy over time, until your whole being aches with the weight of holding on. Now picture opening them, one by one. Picture what it would feel like to walk through your day with open hands instead of clenched fists. Would you feel lighter? Would you breathe deeper? Would you discover that the world does not fall apart when you stop holding it so tightly? The Buddha did not promise a life without suffering. Pain is part of being human, but he did show us that much of our suffering is optional. It comes not from the events themselves, but from the way we cling to them. The illness, the job loss, the argument, these are the first arrows life shoots at us. But the fists we make around them, the stories we tell ourselves, the need to control what cannot be controlled, these are the second arrows, the ones we fire into our own hearts. Letting go is not easy. The mind resists. It insists that safety lies in control. It whispers, if you don't hold tightly, everything will fall apart. But safety does not live in control. Safety lies in trust, in trusting the flow of life, in trusting your own resilience, in trusting that peace is possible, even when certainty is not. Think of a bird perched on a branch. Its trust is not in the branch, which could break at any time. Its trust is in its wings. Letting go is the moment you stop clinging to the branch of control and remember that you too have wings. And so, as we begin this journey, I invite you to look at your own fists. Where are you holding too tightly? What are you afraid to release? Notice the tension in your body, the heaviness in your chest, the thoughts that circle endlessly. And ask yourself, what would it mean to open my hand, even just a little? This is the first step. To see the illusion for what it is. To recognize that gripping harder will never give you the peace you long for. The path begins not with more effort, but with a breath, a pause, a willingness to let go. And as you walk further, you may find that what you release was never yours to hold in the first place. When we look deeply, we see that life itself has always been teaching us this lesson. Consider the seasons. Winter never clings to its frost. Spring never resists the bloom. Summer never holds back its light. And autumn never fights the falling of leaves. Each season arrives, unfolds, and departs with grace. Only human beings, and our craving for permanence, demand that winter never end or that summer last forever. We resist change, we resist flow, and in doing so, we resist life itself. The illusion of control is seductive because it gives us the sense of power. We tell ourselves, if I can manage everything, nothing will hurt me. But pain does not ask for permission. Loss does not knock politely before entering. Change does not wait for us to be ready. When we live by the myth of control, every shift becomes an enemy. Every uncertainty becomes a threat. Our nervous system stays locked in fight or flight. Our breath grows shallow, our nights restless. This is why so many people live lives of quiet anxiety, always on guard, always bracing for the next blow. And yet, when you soften your grip, something remarkable happens. Anxiety loosens. The body releases. The heart begins to rest. Letting go does not prevent pain, but it prevents suffering from multiplying. It frees you to respond with wisdom instead of panic, with presence instead of resistance. A story is told of a monk who walked through a forest carrying a full cup of water. As he stumbled on the uneven path, the water spilled again and again. At last, a teacher said to him, "Why do you clutch the cup so tightly? If you held it gently, if you let your hand move with the rhythm of the path, the water would not spill. Life is this path, uneven and uncertain. We spill joy, spill peace, spill opportunities, because we clutch too tightly. But if we learn to hold gently, to move with the rhythm of change, we discover balance. Letting go is not something you do once. It is a practice, a rhythm, a way of walking. Every day presents new chances to soften your grip. The email unanswered, the plan that shifts, the person who disappoints you, each is an invitation to ask, do I tighten here or do I release? Over time, releasing becomes less frightening and more natural until you begin to live with open hands rather than clenched fists. The modern world celebrates control. It rewards those who micromanage, who dominate, who strive endlessly. But it rarely celebrates peace. Peace does not trend on social media. Peace is not measured in quarterly reports. Peace cannot be purchased or displayed. And yet, peace is what we long for most. Deep in our hearts, beneath the layers of craving, achievement, and fear, there is a simple desire to rest, to breathe, to feel at home in the present moment. The Buddhist path invites us back to this simplicity. It does not say, do nothing. It does not say, stop caring. It says, act with intention, but without clinging. Love fully, but without possession. Work diligently, but without desperation. In other words, live with open hands. Open hands can hold joy without crushing it. Open hands can release sorrow without being broken by it. Open hands can welcome change without fear. Open hands can reach out in compassion, lift others, and still remain light. This is not weakness. It is the deepest kind of strength, the strength to face impermanence and not be destroyed by it. Think about your own life. Recall a time when you held on too tightly, perhaps to a job, a relationship, a plan. Do you remember the stress, the fear, the sleepless nights? Now recall a time when you finally released. Perhaps you quit the job that drained you. Perhaps you let go of the person who could not love you. Perhaps you allowed life to unfold instead of forcing it. Do you remember the relief? The sudden lightness? That is the power of letting go. And yet, we resist. We say, if I let go, I will lose everything. But what do we truly lose? We only lose the illusion that we were ever in control. Life was always moving, always shifting, always flowing. By letting go, we do not lose life, we finally join it. A woman once came to a Zen master, desperate for peace. She asked, "What must I do to be free?" The master replied, "You must let go." She protested, "But I have nothing left. My family is gone. My wealth is gone. My health is fading. What more can I let go of?" The master looked gently at her and said, "Let go of the rope." She realized then that she had been clinging not to things, but to the rope of control, the rope of resistance. And in that moment of release, she found the peace that had eluded her for years. We all hold that rope. We clutch it until our hands bleed, believing it keeps us safe. But the rope only keeps us bound. To let go is not to fall into nothingness. It is to discover the ground that was always beneath you. This first step, this opening of the hand, may seem small, but it changes everything. When you open your hand, you can finally touch life directly. You can feel the breeze, hold the hand of a friend, lift a child, or simply rest your palm against your own heart. These small moments, unnoticed when the fist is clenched, become the treasures of life. So let us walk forward with this truth. Peace is not found in the tightly held fist. Peace is found in the open hand, in the courage to release, in the trust that life flows even when you do not control it. This is where strength lives. This is where freedom begins. And as you carry this truth, let it lead you naturally into the next doorway of wisdom. Because once you begin to open your hand, the question arises, how do you want to use it? If you no longer cling, how do you choose? What does it mean to want wisely, to live with intention, but without attachment? That is the next lesson waiting, and it begins with understanding the art of wise wanting. there is a question that rests quietly at the center of every human life. What do you want? From the moment we are children, we are asked about our wants. What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want for your birthday? What do you want to achieve? Our culture celebrates wanting. It tells us that to want is to be alive, to pursue desire is to have purpose. And yet, look around, so many of us, in chasing what we want, have become exhausted, anxious, and restless. The problem is not wanting itself. The problem is not knowing how to want wisely. There are two kinds of wanting. One is like a gentle flame that warms a room. The other is like a wildfire that consumes everything in its path. The Buddha named them clearly. The first is wholesome desire, chanda. It is the kind of wanting that inspires you to grow, to care, to act in harmony with life. It is the gardener planting seeds, watering them, tending them with patience. The second is craving, Tana. It is the kind of wanting that grasps, clings, demands. It is the gardener digging up the seed every day to check if it has sprouted, shouting at the sky for rain, suffocating the very life they hope to nurture. When we confuse these two, we suffer. Wholesome desire creates energy, direction, and purpose. Craving creates fear, anxiety, and obsession. And most of us, without realizing it, spend our lives tangled in craving, mistaking it for true desire. Think of the last time you wanted something deeply. Perhaps a promotion at work, a new home, or a certain relationship to succeed. Ask yourself, was that wanting rooted in care, in alignment with your values, in a patient trust of the process? Or was it driven by fear, by the desperate belief that if you did not get it, you would not be enough? The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. In America, people are taught that ambition is a virtue. From the classroom to the office boardroom, the message is clear. Bigger is better, faster is stronger, more is success. But beneath the surface, much of this ambition is not wholesome desire, but craving disguised in respectable clothing. It is the voice that says, if I achieve this, then I will finally be worthy. It is the endless hunger that no achievement can satisfy. You may have seen this in yourself, or in others. The millionaire who feels poor, the accomplished professional who feels like a fraud, the parent who gives endlessly, but never feels good enough. This is Tanha, the wildfire that burns through peace. Wholesome desire, on the other hand, is quiet but powerful. It is the energy of a musician practicing their craft not for fame, but for love of the music. It is the parent nurturing a child, not to mold them into perfection, but to support their unfolding. It is the worker who gives their best, not to prove their worth, but to contribute to something larger than themselves. Chanda does not burn you out. It sustains you. It is not frantic. It is steady. It is not rooted in fear. It is rooted in care. But how do we tell the difference in our own hearts? How do we know when our wanting is wholesome and when it is toxic craving? The test is simple. Notice what happens inside you when the outcome is uncertain. If your desire leaves you restless, angry, anxious, unable to breathe until you succeed, it is craving. If your desire allows you to act with energy, but also with peace, to care deeply without clinging to the result, it is wholesome. There is a story of a farmer who planted rice. Each day he watered the field, tended the soil, and did his part. But then he would sit in the evenings, staring at the earth, worrying. What if the rain does not come? What if the insects eat the crop? What if the harvest fails? The worry consumed him until he grew sick. Another farmer planted rice as well. He too watered and tended. But when the evening came, he rested. He knew he had done his part. He trusted the rhythm of nature. One farmer lived in craving. The other lived in wholesome desire. The difference was not in their actions, but in their hearts. This lesson applies to every part of our modern lives. Consider money. Wanting enough to provide for yourself and your family, to live with dignity and comfort, that is wholesome. But when wanting turns into endless comparison, when no number in the bank ever feels like enough, that is craving. Or consider relationships. Wanting to love and be loved, to share life with another, that is wholesome. But when wanting turns into possession, control, jealousy, when your happiness depends entirely on another person never changing, that is craving. Wholesome desire frees you. Craving enslaves you. One is rooted in openness, the other in fear. The Buddha's teaching on this difference is radical because it does not tell us to abandon desire altogether. Many spiritual traditions in the West equate holiness with rejecting all desire. But the Buddha understood that to live is to want. The question is not whether you want, but how you want. When your wanting is wise, it becomes a source of energy rather than suffering. You can test this right now in your own life. Think of one goal you hold today. Ask yourself, if this goal does not happen, will I collapse? Will I lose my sense of worth? Or will I be able to remain at peace, knowing I acted with care and integrity regardless of the outcome? If the first is true, you are living in craving. If the second, you are walking with wholesome desire. This distinction changes everything. It transforms the way you work, the way you love, the way you live. It replaces anxiety with trust, fear with openness, exhaustion with steady energy. And here is the beautiful irony. When you release craving, you actually become more effective. The athlete who competes out of desperation often burns out or chokes under pressure. The athlete who plays for the love of the game moves with freedom and often succeeds beyond expectation. The worker who acts out of fear of failure may achieve short-term gains but feels drained. The worker who acts out of care and passion sustains their energy for years. Letting go of craving does not make you passive. It makes you powerful in the truest way got in the modern world. Craving is everywhere. Advertisements thrive on it. They whisper, you are incomplete. You are lacking. You need this product to be whole. And so we buy, consume, hoard, and still feel empty. Wholesome desire, however, does not feed the marketplace of endless consumption. It does not say, you are not enough. It says, you are already enough. From this fullness, what do you want to create, to give, to nurture? Imagine living from this place. Imagine waking each day, not with the hunger of craving, but with the steady energy of wholesome desire. Imagine pursuing goals, not because you must prove yourself, but because you love the process. Imagine relationships not built on need, but on freedom, where love is chosen rather than demanded. This is the art of wise wanting, and it is not an art you master overnight. It is a daily practice. Each time you feel the grip of craving, the tightness in your chest, the restless thoughts, the fear of losing, you pause. You breathe. You ask, is this care or is this clinging? Is this wholesome desire or is this craving? In asking, you begin to untangle the wildfire from the gentle flame. In time, you notice the difference in your body. Craving feels like pressure, like a storm in the chest. Wholesome desire feels like warmth, like a steady pulse of energy that carries you forward without burning you out. Your body becomes your teacher. Your breath becomes your guide. This is not abstract philosophy. It is daily life. It is the way you respond to your child's mistakes, the way you approach your work, the way you love your partner, the way you dream about your future. It is not about suppressing your wants, but about transforming them, about choosing the kind of wanting that nourishes rather than consumes. And so, as we pause here, reflect on your own heart. What do you want most right now? Can you hold that want gently, as a gardener holds a seed? Can you tend it with care, but without obsession? Can you trust the process rather than demand the harvest? If you can, You will discover a freedom that craving can never give. To live with wise wanting is to live with freedom in the heart. When you understand the difference between wholesome desire and craving, you stop being dragged by the endless cycle of more, more, more. You begin to walk your own path with clarity. And yet, the world around you will continue to pull you toward craving. That is why this lesson is not a single realization, but a practice to be lived again and again. Consider how easily craving sneaks into daily life. You open your phone, and within seconds, the advertisements appear. A new car, a bigger house, a slimmer body, a better life, all dangling before you like bait. You tell yourself, I don't need this, but part of your mind whispers, if I had that, maybe I would finally feel satisfied. This whisper is the voice of craving. It is never content, because its nature is to always demand more. You can give it one thing, and it will ask for 10 more. Wholesome desire, on the other hand, feels different. It is calm, steady, and patient. When you want wisely, you are not enslaved by the outcome. You do not wake up in the night gripped with fear of losing it. You are not crushed if things unfold differently. Instead, you simply walk forward with care, do your part, and trust the rest to life. Let us look at a common example: relationships. Many people enter relationships with craving. They want love, but beneath that wanting lies fear, the fear of being alone, of not being enough, of being abandoned. This fear turns love into possession. It whispers, I must hold you tightly, I must control you, I must make sure you never leave. And so, the relationship suffocates. Love, when held in a clenched fist, cannot breathe. Now consider love born of wholesome desire. It says, I want to share my life with you, to support you, to grow with you. It is not afraid of change, because it knows love is a choice renewed each day, not a contract of control. It allows the other person to breathe, to grow, to evolve. And in that freedom, love deepens rather than collapses. This is the difference between craving and wise wanting. It is the difference between a love that imprisons and a love that liberates. The same lesson applies to money. Craving tells you that no number is enough. You may have thousands, even millions, but the hunger only grows. You lie awake at night fearing loss, comparing yourself to others, chasing numbers that never bring peace. Wholesome desire, by contrast, seeks enough. Enough to care for your family, enough to live with dignity, enough to give and to share. It does not obsess over comparison, because it knows that true wealth is not in the numbers, but in the peace of mind that comes from sufficiency. Think of a man sitting at a table. In front of him is a meal, warm bread, fresh fruit, nourishing soup. If he eats with gratitude, he is satisfied. But if he stares at the meal and thinks, why don't I have more? Why isn't this better? What if I run out? Then no amount of food will ever fill him. This is the difference. The meal is the same. The heart makes it heaven or hell. And this is where the Buddha's teaching becomes practical for every person listening today. It is not about escaping life or renouncing all desires. It is about learning to notice the difference between the desires that free you and the desires that enslave you. How do you cultivate this awareness? It begins with mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a mysterious state reserved for monks. It is simply the act of paying attention, of pausing long enough to ask yourself, where is this want coming from? When you notice your chest tighten, when you notice your breath quicken, when you notice your mind racing with what ifs, you are in the grip of craving. When you feel steady, clear, and at peace even as you pursue your goal, you are rooted in wholesome desire. Another way to practice is gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote to craving. Craving says, what I have is not enough. Gratitude says, what I have is already a gift. Each time you pause to give thanks for what is present, craving loses its grip. Gratitude does not kill desire. It transforms it. It turns desperate reaching into joyful participation. Imagine beginning each day not with the thought, "What is missing?" but with the thought, "What is already here?" That simple shift changes everything. You still act, you still create, you still pursue your goals, but you do so from fullness rather than emptiness. There is a story of two travelers who crossed a desert. One carried a heavy pack filled with supplies, but spent the whole journey worrying it was not enough. He counted his water, weighed his food, and trembled with fear. The other carried the same supplies, but gave thanks for each sip, each bite, each step. Though they walked the same path, one lived in craving and the other in gratitude. Which one do you think enjoyed the journey? This is what wise wanting offers us, the ability to enjoy the journey rather than being tormented by it. It teaches us that desire is not the enemy, but craving is. That ambition can be noble when it is guided by care, but destructive when it is driven by fear. That love can be expansive when it is rooted in freedom, but suffocating when it is chained by control. So let us bring this teaching into your own life. Pause for a moment and reflect. What are the three things you want most right now? It may be success in your career, peace in your relationships, or clarity in your own heart. Now ask, are these wants driven by fear or by care? Do they create tension in your body or warmth in your chest? Do they enslave you with anxiety or free you with energy? This reflection is the beginning of wisdom. And when you catch yourself in craving, do not judge yourself harshly. Do not add shame to the burden. Simply notice, breathe, and release. Remind yourself, this is craving. It will not bring me peace. Then gently return to wholesome desire, to the flame that warms without burning. Over time, this practice changes not only your inner world, but your outer world. People around you will feel the difference. They will notice that you are no longer frantic, no longer desperate, no longer clinging. They will feel the steadiness in your presence, and your life, slowly, will align with this new way of being. This is the art of wise wanting, to live with open hands, to pursue goals with care, but without clinging, to act with energy, but without fear. It is a way of walking that brings peace not only to you, but to everyone you touch. And as we close this part of the journey, we must ask, why do we cling so tightly in the first place? Why do we confuse craving with desire, identity with safety, possession with love? The answer lies in a deeper illusion, the belief in a solid, unchanging self that must be protected at all costs. And so, our next step will take us into this illusion, to uncover the truth that who we are is not fixed, but flowing. Only then can we release the heaviest burden of all, the endless job of defending who we think we are. All our lives, we have been taught to build an identity, as if it were a fortress that would protect us from the storms of existence. From childhood, we are asked, who are you? What do you want to be? What will you achieve? And so we begin stacking bricks. I am the smart one. I am the strong one. I am the successful one. I am the successful one. I am the smart one. I am the strong one. I am the successful one. Helper. Each brick feels like safety. Each label feels like ground beneath our feet. We cling to them because they give us a sense of control in a world that feels uncertain. But if you look closely, you begin to notice cracks in the walls. The role you built your life upon can crumble in an instant. The successful one may fail. The strong one may fall ill. The helper may grow weary. And when the wall crumbles, fear floods in. You ask, if I am not this identity, then who am I? This is the hidden fear that drives so much of our suffering. The Buddha offered a profound teaching about this fear. He spoke of anatta, often translated as not self. It does not mean you are nothing. It means you are not a fixed thing. You are not a solid statue carved once and forever. You are a flowing river, changing with every thought, every breath, every experience. When you see this truth, the burden of defending a fragile identity begins to lift. You realize you do not have to prove yourself again and again. You do not have to cling to roles that no longer fit. You are free to simply be. Think of water poured into different vessels. In a tall glass, it stands upright. In a bowl, it spreads wide. In a river, it rushes forward. Is the water ever fixed? No. Its form shifts, but its essence remains. We are the same. When we cling to an identity, we are like water insisting it must always remain in the shape of a cup, even as life pours it into new vessels. This insistence creates suffering. Consider how this shows up in daily life. A man defines himself as successful because of his career. For years, this identity brings pride. But one day, the company closes or he loses his job. Suddenly, his sense of self shatters. He feels worthless, not because he has changed, but because the role he clung to has changed. Or consider a woman who defines herself as the caretaker. She gives endlessly to her family. But when the children grow up and no longer need her in the same way, she feels lost. She asks, "If I am not the caretaker, then who am I?" These examples reveal the trap. When we mistake a temporary role for a permanent self, we set ourselves up for suffering. Life is change. Roles shift, seasons turn, identities dissolve. To cling is to resist reality. To release is to flow with it. There is a story of a monk who stood before a mirror and asked, "Who are you?" At first, he answered with his name, his age, his history. But then he laughed. None of these things were truly him. They were labels, temporary and shifting. The monk realized he was not a name, not a story, not a role. He was the awareness watching all these things come and go. And in that realization, he felt light, as if a great weight had been set down. This teaching is not about abandoning your roles. You will still be a parent, a worker, a friend. But you stop clinging to them as your essence. You hold them lightly, knowing they will change. You see them as expressions of the river of your life, not as cages that define you. And when they shift, you do not collapse, because you know that you are more than any single role. Think of the masks worn in a theater. An actor may wear the mask of a king in one play, the mask of a servant in another. The mask is not who they are. It is simply what they wear in that moment. Life gives us masks, roles, identities, labels. Wear them when needed, but remember, they are not your face. When the play changes, set them down without fear. The pressure to maintain a solid self is immense in modern culture. We live in a world that constantly demands, define yourself, prove yourself, brand yourself. Social media amplifies this pressure, turning identity into a performance. We curate images, project roles, chase validation, all in service of a self we hope others will admire. But beneath the performance, many feel empty, because the self they present is not fixed, and deep down they know it. The Buddha's wisdom cuts through this illusion. It invites us to stop performing and start living, to stop defending and start flowing, to recognize that the self is not a fortress, but a dance. You are the dancer, and the dance itself, ever-changing, never fixed. When you see this, life becomes lighter. You no longer need to prove your worth, because worth is not tied to a role. You no longer need to cling to the past, because you are not trapped in who you once were. You no longer fear the future, because you are not limited to who you are today. You are free to evolve, to transform, to unfold with each breath. This freedom is not abstract. It touches every part of life. In relationships, it allows you to love without demanding that the other person remain the same. In work, it allows you to change careers, to try new things without feeling that failure destroys you. In moments of loss, it allows you to grieve without collapsing, because you know your essence is not confined to what has been taken. This does not mean the illusion disappears overnight. The habit of clinging to self is strong. It takes practice to notice when you are building walls around an identity, when you are defending a fragile role. But with mindfulness, you begin to catch yourself. You notice the thought, I must be seen as successful. You notice the fear, if I fail, I am nothing. And instead of believing it, you smile gently. You remind yourself, I am not this label. I am more than this role. I am the awareness flowing through it all. This simple reminder loosens the grip of the solid self. It opens a space of freedom where before there was fear. And so, as we close this first half of the journey into the myth of self, reflect on your own walls. What fortress have you built? What roles have you mistaken for your essence? Are you ready to see them as masks, as temporary forms, as flowing water rather than stone? To release the burden of proving and defending is to step into a new kind of life, one where you are free to become, again and again, without fear of losing who you are. If we truly look at the self we try so hard to protect, we see that it is built like a house of cards. Every card is a story, a memory of what we did, a title we earned, a role someone gave us, a belief we repeat. The house looks solid, but the slightest wind of change shakes it. A harsh word from someone, a mistake at work, a sudden illness, and the cards tumble. Then we rush to rebuild, stacking new stories, repeating new affirmations, trying desperately to make the house stand again. But the cycle never ends, because the house itself was never real. The Buddha called this illusion sanayata emptiness. But emptiness is not a void. It is freedom. It means we are not fixed things, but open processes. Like a song that only exists when sung, like a flame that only exists when burning, the self exists only in motion, in interaction, in flow. When you cling to it as something solid, you suffer. When you embrace it as something fluid, you are free. Imagine a river. You stand by its banks, watching the water rush past. Can you point to one drop and say, "This is the river"? Can you freeze one moment and say, "This is its identity forever"? No, the river is never one thing. It is always becoming. And so are you. Think of your own life. Are you the same person you were at 5 years old? At 15? At 30? Even yesterday, you are not who you are today. Your body changes, your thoughts change, your feelings shift. Yet we cling to the illusion of a permanent me and spend endless energy defending it. We say, "This is who I am," and then panic when life proves otherwise. There is great relief in letting go of this burden. A man once told a Zen teacher, "I feel so tired. Every day I try to be the perfect father, the perfect worker, the perfect friend. I feel like I am failing at all of them." The teacher replied, "Then stop trying to be perfect. Just be present." The man paused, realizing that his exhaustion came not from life itself, but from the heavy armor of identity he carried. When you release the need to defend a fixed self, you discover a lighter way of being. You no longer need to win every argument to prove you are smart. You no longer need constant praise to believe you are worthy. You no longer need to cling to youth to believe you are beautiful. You begin to trust that worth is not in the labels, but in the living presence of who you are right now. This teaching can feel frightening at first. To let go of a solid self can feel like standing on ground that dissolves beneath your feet. But then you realize you are never standing on ground. You are always floating in the flow of life. And instead of falling, you begin to swim. There is a practice in Buddhism called noting. When a thought arises, "I am a failure," "I am successful," "I am this," "I am that," you simply note, thinking, You do not cling to the story. You do not build a fortress around it. You let it pass like a cloud in the sky. Over time, you see that these stories come and go endlessly, but the awareness watching them remains. That awareness is closer to who you are than any story ever could be. When you live from awareness instead of identity, you taste freedom. Someone criticizes you, and instead of collapsing, you notice the sting, breathe, and let it pass. Someone praises you, and instead of clinging to the high, you accept it with gratitude and let it pass too. You remain steady, not because life is steady, but because you are no longer chained to the illusions of permanence. Consider the story of a monk who carried a beautiful porcelain cup. One day, he told his students, "To me, this cup is already broken." They were shocked. "But Master, it is perfect, whole, unbroken." The monk smiled. "Yes, but one day it will fall. One day it will shatter. If I cling to the illusion of permanence, I will suffer when it breaks. But if I know it is already broken, I can enjoy it fully now." The same is true of our identities. They are already broken, already changing, already dissolving. When we accept this, we can enjoy them fully without fear. Think of the roles in your own life. Perhaps you are a parent, a worker, a friend, a partner. These roles matter, but they are temporary cups. One day they will change. They will fall. They will shatter. If you cling, you will suffer. If you hold them lightly, you can love them deeply while they last. The truth of not-self does not diminish life. It deepens it. When you no longer cling to a fixed identity, you can meet each moment freshly. You can laugh freely, cry openly, love fully, without fear of losing yourself. Because you understand, there is no self to lose, only the flow of life to join. This is the gift of unbecoming. You unbecome the fortress. You unbecome the performance. You unbecome the endless need to prove. And in unbecoming, you discover freedom. The Western world often teaches the opposite. It says, define yourself. Build your brand. Be someone. And while identity can give direction, when taken too seriously, it becomes a prison. People spend years trapped in roles they outgrew long ago because they fear what will happen if they let go. But the Buddha's wisdom whispers gently, you are not the role. You are not the story. You are the awareness flowing through them all. To live with this wisdom is to live with resilience. When failure comes, you are not destroyed. When success comes, you are not intoxicated. When change comes, you are not paralyzed. You move like water, adjusting, flowing, becoming dot. And so, the question is not, who am I? The deeper question is, can I let go of who I think I am to discover the freedom of simply being? As we step forward from this reflection, carry this truth. You are not the solid self you defend. You are the river flowing, the flame burning, the song being sung. To see this is to begin living from presence instead of illusion. And with this presence, you are ready for the next teaching. Impermanence, the river of change that carries everything. For once you understand that you are not fixed, the next step is to embrace that nothing else is fixed either. And in that embrace, you will discover a peace beyond clinging. There is a story told of a master who lifted a porcelain teacup before his students. It was simple, beautiful, shining in the morning light. The master smiled and said, "To me, this cup is already broken." His students looked confused. One protested, "But master, the cup is whole. It is not cracked. It is not shattered." The master nodded gently. "Yes, but one day it will fall. One day it will break. Knowing this, I can appreciate it fully now. I can enjoy its beauty without fear. I can drink from it with gratitude because I already understand its nature. This is the wisdom of impermanence, Anika. Everything that arises will one day pass. Every joy, every sorrow, every success, every failure, every body, every breath. Yet the human heart resists this truth. We long for permanence. We want the good times to last forever, the people we love to never leave, our bodies to stay young, our achievements to remain secure. And so we cling, and in clinging, we suffer. Think of how much pain arises from this resistance. A parent watches their child grow and feels grief that the little one will never be so small again. A worker clings to a successful career, terrified of losing relevance. A couple falls in love and silently fears the day one of them will leave or die. None of these feelings are wrong. They are deeply human, but they all reveal the same wound, the refusal to accept impermanence. Impermanence is not a flaw in life. It is the nature of life. The flower blooms, not despite the fact that it will wilt, but because it will. The sunset glows fiercely, not despite its brevity, but because of it. The sweetness of life is inseparable from its fleetingness. To resist impermanence is to resist the very thing that makes life precious. And yet, our culture teaches the opposite. Advertisements promise us products that will make us forever young. Success stories tell us we can build a legacy that lasts forever. Even in love, we hear promises of forever and always. These ideas sound comforting, but they set us up for heartbreak, because nothing in this world lasts forever. To build our happiness on permanence is like building a house on sand. The tide will come, and the house will fall. The Buddha's wisdom invites us to build instead on the truth of change, to see impermanence not as an enemy, but as a teacher, to learn to hold things lightly, to love them fully, and to let them go gracefully when the time comes. Think of your own life. How many moments have you missed because you were clinging to the past or fearing the future? Perhaps you sat at a family dinner, but instead of tasting the food, you longed for the way things used to be. Or perhaps you held your partner's hand, but instead of feeling their warmth, you feared the day it might not be there. This is how impermanence steals joy, not because things change, but because we refuse to accept that they do. But imagine another way. Imagine sitting at that family dinner and truly tasting the food, hearing the laughter, feeling the presence of those around you. Imagine holding your partner's hand, and instead of fearing its loss, feeling grateful for its warmth in that moment. When you embrace impermanence, you stop living in fear of the future and start living in fullness of the present. This does not mean we stop grieving when loss comes. It does not mean we become cold or detached. It means that our grief is softened by wisdom, by the understanding that change is not betrayal, but the nature of things. It means that our love is deepened by the knowledge that every moment is a gift, not a guarantee. There is a practice in Buddhism of contemplating death, not to be morbid, but to awaken gratitude. To remember that every breath could be the last sharpens the sweetness of each inhale, each exhale. To remember that loved ones are impermanent makes us hold them more tenderly, speak more kindly, forgive more quickly. Impermanence, when embraced, is not despair but inspiration. It teaches us to live fully now. Think of the seasons again. If summer were endless, would we still treasure its warmth? If autumn never ended, would we still marvel at the falling leaves? Their beauty lies in their impermanence. Life is the same. To live in denial of change is to miss its beauty. To live in awareness of change is to be fully alive. Asterisk, in modern life, we often try to freeze time. We take photographs, record videos, collect souvenirs. There is nothing wrong with these, but if we cling to them, they become core substitutes for the living moment. A photograph of a sunset is not the sunset. A recording of laughter is not the laughter. The only place life can truly be lived is here, now, in the fleeting river of impermanence. And yet, letting go is difficult. The mind fears that if we accept impermanence, we will lose hope. But the opposite is true. Accepting impermanence frees us from false hope and opens us to real joy. When you stop demanding that things last forever, you begin to see them clearly, love them deeply, and release them when it is time. A teacher once told a student grieving the end of a relationship, "Your pain comes not from the fact that love ended, but from the belief that it should have lasted forever." If you can release that belief, you will see that what you shared was real, beautiful, and enough. This wisdom can soften the hardest losses. It does not erase the pain, but it removes the extra layer of suffering, the belief that reality should have been different. To live with impermanence is to live with humility. It reminds us that nothing belongs to us, not even our bodies, not even our breath. Everything is borrowed. Everything will return. This humility makes us gentler, more grateful, more compassionate. When we see that all things are fleeting, we stop clinging so fiercely to our own and begin to honor the fleeting lives of others as well. So let us walk with this truth. Everything changes. This is not a curse, but a gift. For in change lies growth. In change lies beauty. In change lies freedom. To resist impermanence is to fight the river. To embrace it is to float, to flow, to find peace in the very nature of life. When you begin to live with the awareness of impermanence, something profound shifts in the way you relate to life. Small annoyances no longer carry the same weight because you know they too will pass. The traffic jam, the harsh word from a colleague, the mistake at work, these moments sting, but they dissolve quickly when you remember they are not permanent. You no longer waste as much energy clinging to irritation because you know it is like a cloud drifting across the sky. This wisdom also softens our fear of endings. Endings are simply transformations. The end of childhood is the beginning of adulthood. The end of one job is the opening to another path. The end of a day is the gateway to rest. Even death itself is not a failure of life, but part of its natural rhythm. To see endings in this way is to remove their sting. They are not punishments. They are transitions. There is a story of a king who asked his wise advisor for a phrase that would be true in both joy and sorrow. The advisor handed him a ring engraved with the words, "This too shall pass." In moments of despair, the king looked at the ring and found hope. In moments of triumph, he looked at the ring and found humility. The phrase did not diminish his experiences. It deepened them. It reminded him that life is always moving, always changing, and that clinging to either pain or pleasure only multiplies suffering. This is the balance impermanence offers. It teaches us not to push away pain too fiercely, nor to clutch joy too desperately. Both are passing guests. Our task is to welcome them, honor them, and let them move on when it is time. Modern culture often resists this. We are taught to chase pleasure endlessly and to avoid pain at all costs. But both are part of the same river. To cling to pleasure is to fear its loss. To resist pain is to make it heavier. The path of wisdom is to float with both, trusting the river to carry you through. This trust is not passive. It does not mean we stop acting or caring. It means we align our actions with reality rather than fighting it. We plant seeds, but we do not demand they sprout on our schedule. We love people, but we do not demand they stay unchanged forever. We take care of our bodies, but we do not deny that they will age. This alignment with truth brings peace, because we are no longer at war with the nature of life. Think of the trees in autumn. They do not resist the falling of leaves. They release them with grace, trusting the cycle, knowing that spring will come again. Imagine if trees clung to their leaves, refusing to let go. How heavy, how impossible that would be. We are like those trees when we cling to things past their time. We weigh ourselves down with memories, possessions, identities, refusing to let go. But when we follow the wisdom of the trees, we become lighter. We learn that letting go is not loss, but preparation for new life. This wisdom also changes how we love. When you accept impermanence, your love deepens, because you no longer take people for granted. You know they will not always be here, and so you treasure each moment more fully. You forgive more easily, because you know time is short. You speak kindness more often, because you do not want to waste the chance. Love rooted in impermanence is not weaker. It is stronger, more tender, more real. A mother once said, "Knowing my child will grow up makes me cherish his small hands today. Knowing one day he will leave makes me treasure every moment he climbs into my lap." This is the gift of impermanence. It sharpens love, turning every moment into something precious. At the same time, impermanence softens grief. When loss comes, as it inevitably will, the pain is real. But beneath the pain is the wisdom that nothing was ever meant to stay forever. This understanding does not erase the ache, but it brings a kind of peace, a gentle voice that whispers, "This is the way of things." You loved, and that love was real. Now it is time to release. Impermanence also frees us from the illusion of control. When you realize that everything changes, you stop clinging to the fantasy that you can make life bend to your will. Instead, you learn to dance with it. You learn to act where you can and to release where you cannot. This dance is lighter, freer, more graceful. It turns life from a battlefield into a river journey. Imagine carrying a handful of water. If you try to hold it tightly, it slips through your fingers. If you cup your hand gently, the water rests there for a time. This is how we must hold life gently, with care, but without clinging. Then, when it flows away, we release it without despair. To embrace impermanence is to embrace life fully. It is to say yes to change, yes to growth, yes to the fleeting beauty of each moment. It is to stop demanding eternity and to start rejoicing in now. And so, as we close this part of the journey, let us remember the Master's teacup. It is already broken, and in knowing that, we can treasure it deeply while it lasts. Let us remember the autumn trees, releasing their leaves with grace. Let us remember the king's ring whispering, "This too shall pass." These are not symbols of despair. They are doorways to peace. Because once you accept impermanence, you stop fighting life. You begin to flow with it. And in that flow, you find a freedom deeper than anything permanence could ever give. And this freedom leads us naturally to the next teaching. For when you stop clinging and stop fighting, you discover a new way of effort itself. A way of moving through the world without struggle. A way of working, striving, creating not from fear or desperation, but from wholeness. This is the power of non-striving, and it is the next step on our path. The modern world teaches us to hustle. From the moment we are young, the message is clear. Work harder, move faster, never stop. Success is equated with exhaustion. Rest is mistaken for laziness. People wear busyness like a badge of honor, as if the number of tasks completed proves their worth. And so, we run always running, always pushing, always striving. But in the quiet moments, when the noise fades, a question arises. Does this endless striving truly bring us peace? The truth is that striving often leaves us empty. You know this feeling, the long hours spent chasing a deadline, the constant pressure to perform, the restless nights where the mind refuses to be still. Striving says, "You are not enough yet. Do more, be more, achieve more." And no matter how much you achieve, the voice never stops. Striving is fueled by lack. It is born from the belief that something is missing, that you must fight to earn what you already long for inside. But there is another way. The Buddha spoke of effort, but not the kind of effort that drains and destroys. He spoke of right effort, an effort aligned with wisdom, flowing with life instead of against it. This effort is called non-striving. To the modern ear, the word may sound strange. How can effort be without striving? How can we act without struggle? But non-striving is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is effort born not from desperation, but from wholeness. Think of a master archer. When she draws her bow, she does not curse the string, fight the arrow, or rage at the wind. She breathes deeply, aligns her body, focuses her mind, and releases. Her movement is precise, graceful, powerful. The arrow flies not because she forced it, but because she harmonized with the bow, the breath, the moment. This is non-striving. Effort without struggle, action without war. Contrast this with the striving archer, who trembles with tension, who yanks the string in anger, who obsesses over the target. Even if the arrow flies, it carries the weight of his struggle. He exhausts himself, and the joy of the act is lost. Which archer do we wish to be? In your own life, think of the times when effort flowed naturally. Perhaps you were lost in a project you loved, absorbed in music, painting, gardening, or helping someone in need. Hours passed, yet you felt energized rather than drained. That was non-striving. Your effort was not born from lack, but from wholeness. You gave yourself fully to the moment, and the action itself became its own reward. Striving, on the other hand, feels heavy. It drags the body, clouds the mind, and tightens the heart. It is the endless checklist, the anxious comparison, the fear that no matter how much you do, it will never be enough. Striving is a boulder you push uphill every day, only to watch it roll back down again. Non-striving is the current of a river carrying you forward. You still move, but you move with grace, not with war. This teaching is radical in a culture that glorifies hustle. People may ask, if I stop striving, won't I fall behind? Won't I fail? But look closely. Has all your striving truly brought peace? Has all your pushing truly given you rest? Striving may bring moments of achievement, but it rarely brings lasting joy. Non-striving, by contrast, allows you to succeed without losing your soul in the process. There is a Zen story of a student who asked his master, "How long will it take me to reach enlightenment if I strive with all my effort?" The master replied, 10 years. The student then asked, "And if I give everything I have, day and night, without rest?" The master smiled and said, 20 years. The student was puzzled. Why longer? The master answered, because when you strive so hard, you move further from the path. In your desperation, you miss the very thing you seek. This story reveals a profound truth. Striving often blinds us to the present. We become so focused on the goal that we miss the journey. We become so obsessed with results that we forget to live. Non-striving teaches us to walk with presence, to act with care, to give ourselves fully without the constant burden of needing things to be different. Non-striving is not laziness. Laziness is inaction born of apathy. Non-striving is action born of wisdom. It is not about doing nothing, but about doing with alignment. The gardener who waters his plants daily is practicing non-striving. He does not scream at the sky for rain or pull the plants upward with his hands. He simply tends them with steady care, trusting the process. His effort is consistent, but not desperate, devoted, but not clinging. Imagine applying this to your own life. At work, you still complete your tasks, but instead of obsessing over outcomes, you focus on the quality of your presence. In relationships, you still show love, but instead of demanding constant reassurance, you give freely, knowing love thrives in openness. In personal growth, you still set goals, but instead of whipping yourself with self-criticism, you walk patiently, step by step. This shift transforms everything. The body, too, feels the difference. Striving tightens muscles, clenches jaws, shortens breath. Non-striving relaxes the body even as it moves. It turns action into meditation, effort into flow. Imagine cleaning your home not with resentment but with presence, feeling each motion as part of a rhythm. Imagine working on a project not with fear of failure but with curiosity, seeing each challenge as part of the path. Suddenly, life feels lighter, even when it is full. Non-striving also changes how we measure success. Striving says, I will be happy when I achieve this. Non-striving says, I find joy in the action itself. Success becomes less about arriving and more about walking. The destination matters, but it is no longer the only source of meaning. The journey itself becomes sacred. This is why meditation is often called the practice of non-striving. You sit, you breathe, you notice. You are not trying to become something else. You are not chasing perfection. You are simply present. And in that presence, transformation happens naturally. The mind quiets. The heart softens. Peace arises, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Non-striving invites us to bring this same attitude into every corner of life. Work, love, play, even struggle, each can be approached with a heart that is steady, open, and free from desperation. This is not easy in a world that measures worth by productivity, but it is possible. And the more you practice, the more you realize true strength is not in striving harder, but in flowing wiser. So let us pause here and reflect. Where in your life are you striving? Where do you feel the tension of lack, the weight of desperation? Can you soften your grip? Can you shift from pushing to flowing? Can you let effort arise not from fear, but from love, not from emptiness, but from fullness? If you can, you will discover a power greater than any striving could ever give. When we step into non-striving, life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a dance. The pressures of the world do not disappear, but our relationship to them transforms. Instead of dragging ourselves through each day, we move with it. Instead of feeling crushed by demands, we meet them with steadiness. Non-striving does not remove effort. It changes its quality. Consider the ocean. Waves rise and fall endlessly, yet the ocean does not strain to create them. They arise naturally from its depth. In the same way, non-striving allows effort to rise naturally from your being, not from the clenched teeth of desperation. You still work, you still create, you still move forward, but without the war inside. Think of an artist. When driven by striving, she paints with anxiety. She worries about what critics will say, whether the painting will sell, whether it will prove her worth. Each stroke carries tension. But when driven by non-striving, she paints from love of the process. She forgets herself, loses track of time, and becomes absorbed in the act of creation. The painting may or may not sell, but the act itself was fulfilling. One approach drains her. The other nourishes her. In your own life, you can notice these differences. Striving often feels like holding your breath, while non-striving feels like breathing deeply. Striving narrows your vision, making you see only the finish line. Non-striving widens your view, allowing you to notice the beauty of the journey. Striving says, when I get there, then I will be happy. Non-striving says, I can be fully alive here and now, even as I move forward. The Buddha understood this distinction deeply. His own life showed it. In his youth, he strove desperately, first through indulgence in luxury, then through extreme asceticism. Neither brought peace. It was only when he stopped striving against himself and sat in stillness under the Bodhi tree that enlightenment arose. His awakening was not an act of force, but an act of release. He found truth not by pushing harder, but by letting go. Non-striving does not mean we abandon goals. It means we pursue them wisely. We still plant seeds, but we do not dig them up in panic each day. We still train, practice, and work, but with a heart that is steady, not frantic. The energy of non-striving is sustainable, like a steady flame that warms, rather than a wildfire that burns out quickly. This practice also heals our relationships. Striving in love leads to control, jealousy, and exhaustion. It demands constant proof. Do you love me? Will you stay? Am I enough? Non-striving in love, by contrast, is steady and open. It gives freely without demanding. It allows the other to breathe. It trusts that love grows best in freedom, not in chains. Such love is lighter, deeper, and more enduring. The same is true in work. Striving leads to burnout, endless competition, and fear of failure. Non-striving allows you to contribute fully, but without losing your health or peace of mind. You may still rise early, work hard, and give your best, but the energy behind it is different. It comes not from, I must prove myself, but from, I want to give what I can. This shift makes work not only more joyful, but often more effective. People sense the difference. They trust the person who acts from steadiness more than the one who acts from desperation. Non-striving is also essential for spiritual practice. Many people approach meditation as another task to conquer. They sit down and think, I must calm my mind. I must reach enlightenment. I must stop these thoughts. This striving only creates more restlessness. The Buddha's instruction was simple. Sit, breathe, observe. Allow thoughts to rise and fall like waves. Do not chase them, do not fight them. This gentle effort is non-striving, and it is the very ground where transformation takes root. Imagine approaching your whole life like this. Each action becomes an opportunity to practice. Washing dishes, walking, speaking with a friend, each can be done with non-striving. You are not rushing to finish, nor clinging to control. You are simply present, steady, and alive in the moment. Suddenly, life itself becomes meditation. The fruits of non-striving are profound. Stress eases. Anxiety lessens. The body feels lighter, the mind clearer. You begin to notice joy in simple things. A cup of tea, a smile from a stranger, the warmth of sunlight. These joys were always there, but striving blinded you to them. Non-striving opens your eyes again. This way of being also brings resilience. When challenges arise, the striving mind panics. This cannot happen. This ruins everything. The non-striving mind breathes. This too is part of the path. How shall I respond wisely? Instead of collapsing, you adapt. Instead of resisting, you flow. Non-striving does not mean you avoid difficulty. It means you meet difficulty without destroying yourself in the process. And so, as we complete this part of the journey, let us remember, true effort is not frantic, desperate, or exhausting. True effort flows. It arises naturally, like the breath, like the river, like the song of a bird. To live with non-striving is to rediscover this natural rhythm, to let your actions spring from presence instead of fear. This wisdom leads us naturally to the next step. For when you stop striving and begin to flow, you discover the delicate art of balance. Life is not about extremes of control or collapse, indulgence or denial. It is about walking the middle path, steady and alive. And that is the lesson waiting for us now. The middle way, the path of balance in a world of extremes. There is a story told of a musician who once approached the Buddha. The man was a master of the lute, and he asked, "How should I live? Should I deny myself all comfort and live in harsh discipline? Or should I indulge in pleasure and enjoy all the world offers?" The Buddha replied with a question of his own. "When you play your lute, what happens if the string is too tight?" The musician answered, "It snaps. And if the string is too loose?" asked the Buddha. The man replied, "It will not play." The Buddha nodded. So it is with life. The right path is not in extremes, but in balance. The string must be tuned, not too tight, not too loose. This is the middle way. The middle way is one of the most important teachings in Buddhism, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Some think it means compromise, living half-heartedly, avoiding risk. But the middle way is not mediocrity. It is not a gray blend between black and white. It is a living wisdom that knows when to act, when to rest, when to push, and when to release. It is the art of balance in a world of extremes. Look around at modern society, and you will see how extremes dominate. On one side, there is overindulgence, constant consumption, endless distraction, the belief that happiness can be bought, eaten, or scrolled. On the other side, there is denial, harsh self-criticism, relentless discipline, the belief that only through suffering and sacrifice can we be worthy. Both extremes lead to suffering. The indulgent mind feels empty, even when full. The denying mind feels exhausted, even when disciplined. The middle way shows another path, one where we live with intention, joy, and moderation. Think of food as an example. Overindulgence leads to sickness, fatigue, and regret. Denial, starving yourself, also leads to suffering. The middle way is to eat with mindfulness, to enjoy what nourishes without excess, to savor without clinging. It is not about counting every calorie in fear, nor about gorging without thought. It is about eating in a way that sustains both body and heart. That the same is true in work. Overwork leaves you burned out, drained of joy. Laziness leaves you stagnant, without growth. The middle way is steady effort enough to grow, but not so much that you collapse. It is working with presence rather than obsession, resting without guilt, giving your best while still knowing when to stop. The middle way is also vital in relationships. Cling too tightly, and you suffocate the other. Hold too loosely, and the bond withers. The middle way is loving with openness, present, caring, but free of chains. It is giving without losing yourself, and receiving without demanding. This path of balance is not static. It is not about finding one fixed point and staying there forever. Life is movement, and balance is a living dance. A tightrope walker does not freeze in the middle of the rope. They sway, adjust, lean, and correct. Balance is not the absence of movement. It is the art of moving wisely. The Buddha himself discovered this truth through his own life. Before enlightenment, he lived in luxury as a prince, surrounded by indulgence. He found it empty. Then he lived as an ascetic, denying himself food, sleep, and comfort. He nearly died from the harshness. Neither extreme brought freedom. It was only when he embraced the middle way, neither indulgence nor denial, that he discovered peace. His awakening came not from extremes, but from balanced thought. This wisdom speaks powerfully to our modern world, where imbalance has become the norm. Many live in constant overindulgence, overworking, overeating, overconsuming media, yet feel hollow inside. Others swing to the opposite extreme, strict diets, punishing workouts, perfectionist schedules, yet feel trapped in constant pressure. The middle way invites us to step off the seesaw of extremes and find a steadier ground. But how do we practice this in daily life? It begins with awareness. Notice where you lean toward excess or deprivation. Do you eat until you are stuffed, or deny yourself food in guilt? Do you work until exhaustion, or avoid effort out of fear? Awareness is the first step to balance. Then comes experimentation. Like tuning a lute, you learn by adjusting. Too tight, too loose until the string sings. The same is true of life. You try, you notice, you adjust. Balance is not achieved once and for all. It is practiced moment by moment. Mindfulness is the key to this practice. When you are mindful, you can feel when you are tipping too far. You notice the tension of overwork, the sluggishness of indulgence, the guilt of denial. Mindfulness allows you to step back and ask, what brings balance here? Sometimes the answer is to rest. Sometimes it is to act. Sometimes it is to soften. Sometimes it is to strengthen. The beauty of the middle way is that it honors both discipline and joy. It does not reject pleasure. It teaches us to enjoy without clinging. It does not reject effort. It teaches us to work without obsession. It does not reject rest. It teaches us to rest without apathy. It weaves all aspects of life into harmony. This teaching can be applied to every corner of our lives. In conversation, balance is speaking and listening. In thought, balance is planning for tomorrow without losing today. In emotion, balance is feeling deeply without being consumed. In spirituality, balance is practice without fanaticism, devotion without dogma. The middle way is not the easiest path, but it is the most sustainable. Extremes may bring short bursts of intensity, but they are like flames that burn out quickly. Balance is the steady fire that warms through the long night. As you reflect now, ask yourself, where in your life are you living in extremes? Where are you too tight, too loose? Where can you adjust the string so your life begins to sing? This reflection is the beginning of wisdom. The practice of the middle way is not about finding a fixed formula, but about cultivating sensitivity to the moment. Life will keep changing, and balance requires us to keep adjusting. Some days, balance means pushing yourself to complete a task you have delayed. Other days, balance means giving yourself rest before exhaustion consumes you. Some moments require courage to speak, others wisdom to remain silent. The middle way is alive, breathing, always shifting like the flame of a candle in the wind. Consider walking. With each step, your body sways slightly left, slightly right. You are never perfectly still, but through constant adjustment, you move forward steadily. Balance is not the absence of movement. It is the harmony of movement. The same is true of the middle way. It is not about never feeling extremes, but about not getting stuck in them. It is about finding the gentle rhythm between effort and ease. Modern life often pushes us away from balance. Technology keeps us awake late into the night, pulling us toward overindulgence and stimulation. Work cultures glorify overachievement, pulling us toward burnout. Social media magnifies comparison, pulling us toward dissatisfaction. At the same time, consumer comforts tempt us toward laziness, distraction, and avoidance. The middle way is a quiet rebellion against both sides. It invites us to step off the hamster wheel of excess and away from the dull fog of denial. But balance is not neutral. It is deeply alive. Imagine tasting a perfectly brewed cup of tea, not too bitter, not too weak. Imagine sitting under the sun on a spring day, warm but not scorching, breezy but not cold. That sense of just right is what the middle way feels like in life. It brings a clarity, a groundedness, a peace that allows joy to bloom naturally. This wisdom is not abstract. Think of relationships again. Many people either cling too tightly, suffocating their partner with need, or hold too loosely, avoiding intimacy out of fear. Both extremes cause pain. The middle way is intimacy with space, closeness with freedom. It allows love to breathe, to deepen without chains. It requires awareness and care, but it creates relationships that are steady and nourishing. Think of money. Overspending leads to debt and stress. Hoarding leads to fear and isolation. The middle way is mindful use enjoying what you have, saving with care, sharing with generosity. Money then becomes a tool for living, not a chain of worry. Even in spiritual life, extremes abound. Some people pursue pleasure, using spiritual language to justify indulgence. Others pursue denial, rejecting joy as if suffering itself were holiness. The Buddha saw both during his journey and rejected both. The middle way is a spirituality that embraces joy without clinging, discipline without harshness. It is a path that honors the human heart while guiding it toward freedom. Balance also brings freedom from guilt. In a world of extremes, people constantly feel they are failing. If they work hard, they feel guilty for neglecting family. If they rest, they feel guilty for not working. The middle way frees us from this endless tug of war. It teaches us to give our full presence to what is in front of us. When we work fully. When we rest fully. When we love fully. This is balance, not doing everything at once, but doing one thing at a time with mindfulness. The middle way is also about compassion toward yourself. Extremes are often born from inner harshness. You push yourself relentlessly because you believe you are never enough. Or you collapse into avoidance because you believe effort is pointless. Both arise from self-judgment. Balance arises from self-compassion, the recognition that you are human, that you deserve both effort and rest, both discipline and kindness. When you hold yourself with compassion, balance flows naturally. There is a story of a monk who trained a young student. The student was zealous, meditating all night, fasting too strictly, pushing his body to exhaustion. One morning, the monk said, "When you pluck a string too tight, it breaks. When you pluck it too loose, it will not play. Your practice is the same. Find the note that sings." The student softened his harshness, and over time, his practice deepened. He discovered joy in meditation, not just struggle. His growth came not from extremity, but from balance. This story mirrors our lives. Many of us treat our daily existence like the student's harsh training, pushing too tightly or neglecting too loosely. But the truth is, our lives are instruments, and only in balance can they sing. To practice the middle way is to pause and listen. Each morning, ask yourself, what brings balance today? Do I need rest or effort? Do I need to speak or listen? Do I need to hold on or let go? Each answer may be different because balance is not rigid. It is a live dot, and when we live this way, peace begins to grow. We discover that joy is not in chasing extremes, but in walking steadily, step by step, in harmony with life. We no longer fear collapse or crave constant intensity. We find satisfaction in the middle path, where the heart is calm and the spirit is free. As we close this part of the journey, remember the lute string. Too tight and it snaps. Too loose and it falls silent. Just right and it sings. Let your life be like that, tuned, balanced, steady. This is the middle way, the art of walking the edge of balance. And now, with this understanding of balance, we are ready for the next lesson. For when we learn to live in balance, we naturally turn outward, toward others. We begin to see that compassion is not weakness, but strength. We discover that love, when free of clinging and balanced by wisdom, becomes the deepest source of freedom. And so, our next step is to explore the practice of compassion, the art of loving without chains. There is no hunger in the human heart greater than the hunger to love and be loved. From the moment we are born, we reach for connection. A baby cries for the warmth of a mother's arms. A child longs for approval. An adult seeks companionship, intimacy, understanding. Love is the thread that runs through every life, the bond that makes existence meaningful. And yet, for many, love becomes not a source of freedom, but of pain. Why? Because we mistake attachment for love. Attachment says, I need you to be mine. I need you to stay the same. I need you to give me what I want. Attachment clings, controls, demands. It suffocates the very thing it claims to cherish. True compassion, by contrast, says, I love you as you are. I want your happiness, even if it changes, even if it does not always include me. Compassion is not about possession. It is about freedom for yourself and for the one you love. The Buddha taught that compassion, karuna, is one of the highest expressions of the human heart. But compassion is not pity, nor is it indulgence. It is the deep recognition that all beings suffer and the sincere wish to relieve that suffering. Compassion does not chain the other. It frees them. It does not cling to me and mine. It opens to we and ours. Consider how often relationships in the modern world are built on chains. Partners demand constant proof of love. Parents cling to children, unable to let them grow. Friends hold grudges, expecting loyalty without freedom. These chains are heavy. They turn love into a prison, a contract of control. And when the other person inevitably changes, as all beings do, the chains tighten, and both suffer. But compassion without chains is different. It says, I see you. I care for you. I want your well-being, even if it looks different from what I imagined. This love breathes. It gives space. It allows growth. And in that space, love becomes not weaker, but stronger, because it is rooted not in fear, but in freedom. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you clutch too tightly, you harm it. If you open your hands completely, it flies away. But if you hold gently, with care but without clinging, the bird may choose to stay. Compassion is that gentle holding. It honors freedom while offering love. This teaching is not only about romance. It touches every bond. In parenting, compassion without chains means guiding children with wisdom, but allowing them to become who they are, not who you demand. In friendship, it means being present without expecting constant return. In community, it means helping others not for recognition, but out of genuine care. Compassion without chains transforms every relationship. One of the Buddha's disciples once asked, "How should we love?" The Buddha replied, "Like a mother loves her only child. A mother's love, at its best, is unconditional. She does not calculate, if I give, what will I get back? She loves freely, fiercely, without chains. This is the heart of compassion. But even mothers can cling. Even lovers can chain. Even friends can demand. That is why compassion must be rooted in wisdom. Without wisdom, love becomes attachment. With wisdom, love becomes freedom that modern culture often confuses passion with possession. Songs, movies, and stories glorify jealousy, control, and obsession as signs of love. But obsession is not love. It is fear in disguise. True love does not fear change. It does not collapse when seasons shift. It does not demand that the beloved remain frozen in time. True love flows with impermanence, embraces growth, and finds joy in the other's freedom. This is why compassion is not weak. It takes great strength to love without clinging. It takes courage to say, I want your happiness, even if it takes you in a direction away from me. This is love that L-I-B-E-R-A-T, ease. Think of the sun. The sun shines on all without discrimination. It does not say, I will shine only on those who please me. Its light is free, generous, and steady. Compassion is like the sun. It gives warmth without chains, light without demand. When we love this way, our relationships become healthier, lighter, and more enduring. This teaching also applies to how we love ourselves. Many people treat themselves with chains, loving only when they succeed, condemning when they fail. This conditional self-love is fragile and harsh. Compassion without chains toward oneself says, I care for myself even in failure. I wish myself peace even in struggle. This kindness becomes the foundation for extending compassion to others. For if you cannot free yourself from chains, how can you free another? There is a story of a monk who carried an old woman across a river. Afterward, his companion scolded him, saying, We monks are not supposed to touch women. The monk replied, Brother, I set her down on the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? This story reminds us that compassion without chains is not about clinging to rules or to people, It is about responding with care in the moment, then letting go. It is love in action. Free of burden. Compassion also expands beyond personal relationships. It extends to all beings. When you see the suffering of a stranger, an animal, even the earth itself, and your heart moves to relieve that suffering, that is compassion. And when you act not from guilt or obligation, but from genuine care, your love becomes part of the healing of the world. But beware, compassion without wisdom can burn out. Many people give endlessly, thinking they are practicing compassion, but they chain themselves with exhaustion and resentment. True compassion honors balance. It knows that to care for others, you must also care for yourself. A middle way applies here too. Too little compassion hardens the heart. Too much self-sacrifice breaks it. Balance keeps compassion alive. So ask yourself, in your life, where does your love chain others? Where does it demand instead of give? Where can you soften, release, and allow your love to breathe? And also ask, where do you chain yourself, giving until you collapse? Where can you balance love for others with love for yourself? Compassion without chains is not theoretical. It can be practiced every day. It is in listening without judgment. It is in forgiving without demand. It is in helping without expectation. It is in smiling at a stranger, holding space for a friend, comforting a child, or sitting quietly with someone in pain. These small acts are the practice of freedom and love. And as you practice, you may notice something beautiful. Love grows when it is freed. The more you let go of chains, the more your love expands. It moves beyond me and mine to we and ours. It becomes vast, like the ocean, deep enough to hold all beings. This is the promise of compassion without chains. It transforms love from a prison into a path of freedom. It heals relationships, softens the heart, and connects us to the great web of life. And as we close this first half of the journey into compassion, we prepare for the next step, to see how this freedom and love is tested most deeply in times of conflict, fear, and anger. For compassion is easy when all is well, but its true strength is revealed when life is difficult. That is where we turn next. Compassion without chains becomes most visible when life tests us. It is easy to love when others are kind, when relationships are smooth, when circumstances favor us. But what about when someone hurts us? What about when anger rises, when betrayal stings, when fear closes the heart? This is where compassion reveals its true depth, not as sentiment, but as strength. Imagine a friend speaks harshly to you. The instinct may be to lash back, to defend, to punish. This is the chain of reactivity, binding both you and the other in suffering. Compassion without chains pauses. It asks, what pain might they be carrying? What fear drives their words? This does not excuse the harm, but it opens the heart to see beyond the surface. And in that openness, your response changes. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, you bring water. Instead of chains, you offer freedom. This is not weakness. To meet anger with compassion requires immense courage. Anyone can strike back. It takes strength to soften. Compassion does not mean tolerating abuse or allowing harm to continue. It means responding with clarity, with firmness when needed, but without hatred. It is the ability to protect yourself and others while refusing to let bitterness poison your heart. Is a story of the Buddha facing a man who insulted him with rage. When the man finally stopped, the Buddha asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man answered, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha replied, "Then I refuse your anger, and it remains with you." This story shows the essence of compassion without chains. The Buddha did not absorb the poison of hatred, nor did he return it. He simply let it go, remaining free. This practice can transform not only personal conflicts, but entire communities. Imagine if, in moments of division, people responded with compassion rather than reactivity. Imagine if political debates were rooted in listening rather than shouting. Imagine if cultural differences were met with curiosity rather than fear. Compassion without chains is not naive, it is revolutionary. It shifts the cycle of conflict by refusing to feed it. But compassion without chains begins within. The anger and fear we project onto others often come from wounds inside us. If you chain yourself with self-hatred, you will chain others with judgment. If you free yourself with compassion, you will naturally extend that freedom to others. This is why self-compassion is not selfish. It is the root of all compassion. When you can look at your own flaws and say, "I care for myself anyway," you begin to understand how to love others the same way. Modern life often overlooks this. Many people push themselves relentlessly, expecting perfection, berating themselves for every mistake. They believe harshness is necessary for growth. But the opposite is true. Growth flourishes in kindness. Just as a plant needs sunlight more than scolding, the human heart needs compassion more than punishment. When you free yourself from the chains of self-condemnation, you create space to grow with gentleness. This self-compassion then ripples outward. Parents who treat themselves with kindness model it for their children. Leaders who forgive their own mistakes lead with humility rather than arrogance. Friends who embrace their own imperfections offer deeper acceptance to others. Compassion without chains is contagious. It spreads wherever it is practiced. It also reaches beyond human relationships. When you extend compassion to animals, to the environment, to the earth itself, you step into a larger circle of love. You see that your life is intertwined with all life. The tree that gives you oxygen, the river that gives you water, the soil that grows your food, all deserve your care. Compassion without chains dissolves the illusion of separateness and awakens a sense of belonging to the great web of existence. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. To love without clinging, to care without chains, requires daily practice. It requires mindfulness to notice when fear disguises itself as love. It requires courage to let others grow in directions you did not expect. It requires patience to forgive again and again. Yet the reward is profound. Relationships that are lighter, hearts that are freer, lives that are more joyful. Consider this reflection. Think of someone you love deeply. Now ask, do I want their happiness, even if it is not tied to me? Can I let them change without fear? Can I support their freedom, not just my comfort? If you can answer yes, even imperfectly, you are walking the path of compassion without chains. And remember, this practice is not about perfection. There will be times when you cling, when fear tightens your grip, when chains appear again. That is part of being human. The practice is to notice, release, and return to freedom. Each time you let go, love grows purer, freer, more expansive. This is the promise of compassion without chains, to love without imprisoning, to care without controlling, to connect without fear. It is to turn love into liberation for yourself and for all beings. And now, as we step forward, we see where this teaching leads us next. For if compassion without chains is possible in relationships, it must also be possible in our relationship with suffering itself. Can we meet our pain, our fear, our wounds with the same compassion? Can we sit with suffering not as an enemy, but as a teacher? That is the next part of our journey. Learning to embrace suffering as the doorway to freedom. There was once a monk who owned a simple porcelain teacup. It was his only possession of beauty, and he treasured it greatly. One day, as he washed it, the cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the stone floor. At first, grief rose in his chest, but then he smiled and said, "Of course. This is the nature of the cup." He realized that the cup's breaking was not a tragedy, but a truth. It had always been fragile. It had always been destined to break. In that moment, His grief softened, and in its place arose peace. This story is a doorway to understanding suffering. For much of life, we resist pain. We deny it, fight it, bury it, numb it. We imagine that happiness means the absence of suffering. But the Buddha taught something radical. Suffering is not the enemy. Suffering is the teacher. It is not a punishment. It is the very path to freedom. The Buddha's first teaching after enlightenment was the Four Noble Truths, and at the heart of them lies this: life contains suffering. Birth, aging, sickness, loss, death all bring pain. But suffering is not only in these great events. It is woven into daily life. The frustration of a delayed train, the anxiety of unpaid bills, the ache of loneliness in a crowded room. These small sorrows accumulate, forming the background hum of existence. Most people treat suffering as a mistake, as if life has gone wrong when pain arises. But suffering is not a mistake. It is a message. It is the body saying, "Pay attention." It is the heart saying, "Look here." Beneath every moment of pain is a lesson about clinging, impermanence, or the illusion of self. To resist suffering is to miss its wisdom. To embrace suffering is to walk through the doorway of freedom. Think of physical pain. When you touch a hot stove, pain teaches you to pull away. Without pain, you would burn yourself severely. In the same way, emotional pain teaches us where we are clinging, where we are resisting change, where we are believing illusions. Pain is the signal that guides us back to truth. Yet modern culture often encourages us to avoid suffering at all costs. We distract ourselves with entertainment, numb ourselves with substances, bury ourselves in work, chase endless pleasures to escape discomfort. But avoidance only deepens the wound. The pain we refuse to face grows heavier, returning again and again until we listen. The Buddha compared suffering to an arrow. The first arrow is the pain itself, loss, sickness, disappointment. The second arrow is our reaction: anger, denial, blame, self-pity. We cannot always avoid the first arrow, but we can choose whether to fire the second. When we embrace suffering, we stop shooting ourselves with that second arrow. We allow the pain to teach without multiplying it with resistance. Imagine losing a job. The first arrow is the loss, the shock, the uncertainty. The second arrow is the thought, "I am worthless. I will never succeed. This should not have happened." These thoughts turn pain into despair. But if we embrace the suffering, we might say, "Yes, this hurts. Yes, this is difficult. But it is also change. It is also an opening." Suddenly, the loss becomes not only an ending, but a beginning. Embracing suffering does not mean seeking it out or enjoying it. It means meeting it honestly, without denial, without hatred. It means sitting with grief when it comes, feeling the ache in the chest, allowing the tears to fall. It means acknowledging fear, anxiety, disappointment, rather than burying them. In this honesty, suffering begins to soften. There is a practice in Buddhism called touching the wound. Instead of running from pain, you gently place your awareness there. You breathe into the ache, the tightness, the sorrow. At first, it feels unbearable, but slowly something shifts. You realize that the pain is not infinite. It moves, it changes, it dissolves. And in the space that opens, peace arises. Think of a child crying in the night. If the parent ignores the child, the cries grow louder. But if the parent holds the child with tenderness, the cries begin to soften. Our suffering is the same. When ignored, it grows louder. When held with compassion, it begins to ease. This practice transforms the way we live. Instead of fearing suffering, we begin to trust it. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we ask, "What is this teaching me?" Each pain becomes a teacher. Each loss becomes a lesson. Each sorrow becomes a doorway. and the lesson is often the same. Do not cling. Do not resist. Do not demand permanence in a changing world. Suffering points us again and again toward letting go, toward presence, toward compassion. Without suffering, we would never learn. Without suffering, we would remain asleep. This is why the Buddha called suffering a noble truth. It is not a curse to be erased, but a reality to be understood. And when understood, it leads to freedom. But understanding suffering is not only about philosophy. It is about practice in daily life. When stress arises at work, can you pause, breathe, and recognize it as the first arrow? When conflict arises in a relationship, can you notice the second arrow before you fire it? When grief arises in loss, can you sit with it tenderly, allowing it to move through you? These small practices turn suffering from enemy into ally. And slowly, as you embrace suffering, fear begins to fade. You realize you can face pain without being destroyed by it. You realize you can meet loss and still find love. You realize you can walk through fire and emerge softer, not harder. This is the doorway to freedom opened, not by avoiding suffering, but by walking through a dot. To embrace suffering is to change the story we tell about it. Most of us see suffering as proof that something is wrong, that life has betrayed us, that we have failed, that we are unlucky. But the Buddha's teaching flips the story. Suffering is not proof of failure. It is proof of being alive. It is the natural shadow of love, of change, of impermanence. To live is to know joy, and to live is also to know sorrow. The two cannot be separated. Think of the love you hold for someone dear. That very love contains the seed of future grief, because one day you will part. Yet would you reject the love to avoid the grief? No, the sweetness and the sorrow are inseparable. To embrace suffering is to accept both, to say yes to the whole of life, not only the pleasant parts. This does not mean we glorify pain. We do not seek it out or romanticize it. We simply stop running from it. We recognize that avoiding pain only deepens it. The drink numbs the sorrow for a night, but leaves the heart heavier in the morning. The distraction hides the grief for an hour, but leaves the wound unhealed. Facing the suffering directly is the only way it transforms. There is a Zen saying, "The obstacle is the path. The very place where you stumble is the place where you grow. The very wound you fear to touch is the wound that teaches you compassion. The very sorrow you resist is the sorrow that opens your heart." This is why suffering, when embraced, becomes the doorway to freedom. Consider the lotus flower, one of Buddhism's great symbols. The lotus blooms in muddy water, its roots sunk deep in the muck. Without mud, there is no lotus. Without suffering, there is no awakening. The mud is not separate from the beauty. It is the condition for the beauty. When you look at your own life, you will see the same. The times of greatest growth often arose from the times of greatest pain. The heartbreak that taught you empathy, the failure that taught you resilience, the loss that taught you gratitude. The mud became the lotus. This perspective can change how we meet each challenge. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this pain?" we can ask, "What is the lotus hidden in this mud?" The answer may not come immediately, and the pain may still hurt. But holding this question opens the heart to transformation. The Buddha himself faced suffering deeply. Before enlightenment, he left behind wealth, comfort, and family, only to confront sickness, hunger, and despair. His journey was not an escape from suffering, but a direct embrace of it. Sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, he did not run from fear, temptation, or pain. He faced them fully, and in that embrace, he found awakening. His life is a testament to the truth. Suffering is not the end, but the doorway. In daily life, this practice requires gentleness. When grief rises, sit with it like an old friend. When anxiety buzzes, Breathe with it like a restless child. When anger burns, notice its heat without throwing it onto others. Each time you meet suffering with awareness, you weaken its chains. You discover that pain does not need to destroy you. It can pass through you, leaving wisdom in its wake. There is a meditation called sitting with the fire. Imagine your suffering as a flame burning within you. Instead of trying to put it out, you sit beside it, watching, breathing, listening. At first, the fire feels unbearable. But as you stay, you notice it flickers, it shifts, it dims. Eventually, the fire cools into ash. You realize you survived. You realize the fire was never endless. This practice teaches the courage to stay with suffering instead of fleeing. And something beautiful happens when you embrace your own suffering. Your compassion for others grows. Once you have touched your own grief, you understand the grief of others more deeply. Once you have faced your own fear, you recognize the fear in others. Your heart softens. You stop judging so harshly. You begin to see that everyone carries pain, often invisible. This recognition is the root of compassion. Imagine walking down a busy street. You see people rushing, frowning, lost in thought. Instead of annoyance, you think, they too are carrying burdens. They too know sorrow. This shift changes how you move in the world. A simple smile, a patient pause, a kind word, these small acts become easier because your heart recognizes the shared human condition. Suffering, once embraced, becomes the bridge of connection. This is the paradox. The more we fear suffering, the more isolated we become. The more we embrace it, the more connected we feel. Because suffering is universal. No one escapes it. When we deny it, we feel alone in our pain. When we accept it, we realize we are part of the human family. Everyone cries. Everyone loses. Everyone aches. In this shared truth, compassion is born. And so, the practice of embracing suffering is not grim. It is liberating. It allows us to live more fully, to love more deeply, to connect more honestly. It removes the constant fear of pain because we know we can face it. It removes the illusion that something is wrong with us when we hurt, because we know hurt is part of being human. It turns the hardest moments into teachers, the darkest nights into pathways, the mud into lotus. As we close this part of the journey, remember the monk's teacup. It was always fragile, always destined to break. Our lives are the same. They are fragile, fleeting, woven with both joy and sorrow. To resist this truth is to live in fear. To embrace it is to live in peace. And with this embrace, we are ready to step into the next teaching. For when you accept suffering as part of life, you no longer cling to false stories or endless distractions. You begin to search for meaning beyond the illusions. You begin to ask, what is real? What is lasting? What is true? This search leads us to the wisdom of emptiness, the insight that frees the heart from illusion. Imagine standing before a beautiful mountain lake. The water is still, perfectly clear, reflecting the sky, the trees, the peaks around it. At first glance, the reflections look solid, real, almost touchable. But if you reach out your hand, nothing is there. The image vanishes at the slightest ripple. A mountain is real. The reflection is illusion. In the same way, much of what we take to be solid and permanent in life is more like reflections, convincing, yet empty of true substance. The Buddha called this insight sunyata, emptiness. To Western ears, the word emptiness can sound frightening, as if it means nothing matters, as if life is hollow. But that is not the meaning. Emptiness does not mean nothing exists. It means nothing exists in the way we imagine solid, permanent, separate. Everything is interdependent, shifting, fluid, without a fixed self. Think of a flower. When you look at it, you see a single thing, a beautiful blossom. But look deeper, and you see the sunlight, the rain, the soil, the seed, the gardener. Without these, there is no flower. The flower does not exist on its own. It is empty of separate self. And yet, because it is empty, it can be full of everything. In its petals, you see the entire universe. This is the heart of emptiness. Nothing stands alone. Nothing is fixed. Everything arises from conditions, and when conditions change, it changes too. When we forget this, we cling to illusions. We grasp at people as if they will never change, at possessions as if they will last forever, at our own identity as if it were carved in stone. But life shows us again and again that this is not true. Everything we cling to eventually slips through our fingers. Suffering arises not because things are empty, but because we refuse to see their emptiness. Consider money. We chase it, cling to it, fear losing it. But what is money? Paper, metal, numbers on a screen. Its value depends on agreements, systems, trust. When those shift, money shifts. It has no solid core. To see this does not mean we stop using money, but we stop clinging to it as the source of our security. Consider relationships. We often say, "This person is mine. They will always be here. They will never change." But people are not statues. They grow, age, shift, move. To see their emptiness is to accept their fluidity, to love them without clinging, to release the illusion of control. Even the self is empty. We say, "This is who I am." But look closer. Your body changes constantly, cells dying, new ones forming. Your thoughts shift moment by moment. Your moods rise and fall like waves. Where is the solid self? You are a river, always flowing. Never the same twice at first. This insight can feel unsettling. If everything is empty, if nothing is fixed, where do we stand? But emptiness is not a void. It is freedom. Imagine holding a rope tightly, believing it is a snake. You are terrified, trapped in fear. Then you see clearly, it is only a rope. The fear dissolves. Emptiness is this seeing. It dissolves illusions and frees the heart. Emptiness also reveals interconnection. When you see that nothing exists alone, you see that everything is part of everything else. You are not a separate self, cut off from the world. You are the earth that feeds you, the air that fills your lungs, the people who shape your life. You are woven into the fabric of all that is. This understanding births compassion, because harming others is harming yourself. Helping others is helping yourself. There is no separation. Modern life often hides this truth. We are taught to see ourselves as isolated individuals, striving for personal success, guarding personal possessions, building personal identities. But emptiness shows that this is illusion. You cannot exist without others. Your food, your home, your language, your very breath come from the web of life. To see emptiness is to awaken gratitude, humility, and connection. There is a story of a monk who asked his teacher, "What is emptiness?" The teacher held up a glass of water. "This glass exists," he said, "but not by itself. It is made of sand, fire, the hands of workers. It holds water that came from clouds, rivers, mountains. When you drink, you are drinking the whole cosmos. Nothing stands alone. This is the practical power of emptiness. It shifts how we see the world. A meal is no longer just food. It is sunlight, rain, soil, farmers, transport, community. A breath is no longer just air. It is trees, oceans, the atmosphere, the cycle of life. Each moment reveals connection. Each moment reveals wonder. And with this wonder comes release. If nothing is fixed, we do not need to cling so desperately. If nothing is separate, we do not need to feel so alone. Emptiness dissolves fear. It shows that the self we defend so fiercely is an illusion. that the things we chase so endlessly are fleeting, that the life we cling to so tightly is already part of something vast and flowing. To live with this wisdom is to live lightly. You still eat, work, love, and play, but without the heavy chains of illusion. You enjoy what comes, release what goes, and trust the flow. You see the reflections in the lake, beautiful but fleeting, and you do not grasp at them. You turn instead to the mountain itself, the solid truth of interconnection, impermanence, and freedom. To understand emptiness deeply is to see that freedom is not found in clinging, but in release. We spend so much of life defending illusions, the illusion of a permanent self, the illusion of lasting possessions, the illusion of unchanging relationships. But when we see through these illusions, we no longer have to fight reality. We can finally rest. Think of the sky. Clouds form, drift, and dissolve. Storms rage, then clear. The sky itself remains open, vast, ungraspable. Our lives are like this. Thoughts, feelings, identities, and events come and go like clouds. We suffer when we mistake them for the sky itself. Emptiness reminds us, you are not the clouds. You are the openness in which they appear. This realization does not make life cold or detached. On the contrary, it makes life more vivid. When you stop demanding permanence, you can appreciate impermanence fully. When you stop clinging to mine, you can cherish freely. When you stop fearing loss, you can love without chains. Emptiness does not erase meaning. It deepens it. Consider a sand mandala, a sacred design painstakingly created by monks, grain by grain. The artwork is breathtaking, yet when it is complete, the monks sweep it away, returning the sand to the earth. They do this not because the mandala was meaningless, but because its meaning lies in its impermanence. It was beautiful precisely because it could not last. Emptiness is the same. It teaches us to savor without clinging, to love without possession, to live without fear. This insight also transforms our view of problems. When you see everything is fixed, problems feel permanent and overwhelming. But when you see emptiness, you realize problems too are conditions arising and passing. Suffering is not eternal. It is dependent on causes. Change the causes and suffering changes. This brings hope because no pain is absolute. All is fluid, all is workable. Even the self, which feels so solid, reveals its emptiness under examination. Who are you? Are you your body? But your body is constantly changing. Hair grows, cells die, organs renew. Are you your thoughts? But thoughts rise and fall like sparks. Are you your emotions? But emotions shift moment by moment. If you search for the permanent I, you will not find it. And yet, awareness is there open, spacious, witnessing. To rest in this awareness is to touch freedom. At first, this may feel like losing something. If there is no solid self, who am I? But slowly, it feels like gaining everything. If you are not bound by a fixed identity, you can be free. You can grow, change, flow. You are not trapped in the stories others tell about you or the stories you tell about yourself. You are the space where stories arise and dissolve. This is the heart of emptiness. Not nothingness, but vast possibility. Emptiness also opens the door to compassion. When you see that the boundary between me and you is not solid, you realize that your joy is tied to others' joy, your suffering to others' suffering. You no longer see yourself as an isolated island, but as part of the ocean of life. This dissolves selfishness and awakens care. Harming another is harming yourself. Helping another is helping yourself. In emptiness, compassion flows naturally. Modern science echoes this truth. Quantum physics shows that matter is not solid, but patterns of energy. Ecology shows that no creature survives alone. All are part of ecosystems. Psychology shows that the self is not fixed, but shaped by relationships and environment. What the Buddha taught centuries ago, that all is empty of separate self, is being confirmed. In many ways, to live this wisdom is to lighten the heart. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones labeled mine, my job, my house, my reputation, my body, my achievements. We walk bent under the weight, terrified of losing any stone. But emptiness reveals none of these were ever truly yours. They are borrowed, passing, flowing. When you set the backpack down, you feel lighter. You can still care for these things, but without clinging. You can enjoy them while they last and let them go when they pass. This lightness is freedom. It does not mean withdrawing from life, but entering life more fully. You work, but without being crushed by success or failure. You love, but without being chained by fear of loss. You live, but without being imprisoned by illusions. You walk lightly because you know all is empty, all is interdependent, all is free. And so, as we close this teaching, let us remember, emptiness is not despair. It is liberation. It is the insight that dissolves illusion and opens the heart. It is the mountain behind the reflection, the sky beyond the clouds, the openness that holds all. To see emptiness is to see life as it is, fleeting, interdependent, vast, and beautiful. And with this vision, we are ready for the next step. For once we see emptiness, we begin to realize that even awakening itself is not an endpoint, but a living path. Enlightenment is not escape from life, but full presence within it. Our journey now turns toward this final insight. Awakening as a way of living, the integration of wisdom and compassion in every breath. Many people imagine awakening as a lightning strike, a sudden event that lifts a person forever above the struggles of ordinary life. They picture enlightened beings as distant, untouchable, walking on clouds, free of all human mésalliances. But the truth, as the Buddha taught, is much more intimate, much more human. Awakening is not about escaping life. It is about living life more fully, more clearly, more compassionately. It is not a single moment, but a way of being woven into every moment. Awakening begins with small shifts. A breath taken with awareness. A pause before anger becomes words. A smile offered to a stranger without expectation. These moments may seem ordinary, but they are the seeds of awakening. Each act of mindfulness, each gesture of compassion, each release of clinging is a step on the path. Enlightenment is not a distant peak to climb. It is the way you place your feet on the ground right now. The Buddha himself lived this truth. After his awakening beneath the Bodhi tree, he did not withdraw from the world. He did not retreat to a mountaintop, untouched by humanity. He walked among people teaching, listening, eating, resting. He lived simply, humbly, fully present. His awakening was not escape, but embodiment. It was wisdom in action, compassion in daily life. To awaken as a way of living means to carry awareness into everything you do. Washing dishes is not a chore, but a meditation. The feel of warm water, the sound of clinking plates, the rhythm of the breath. Walking is not just moving from one place to another, but an opportunity to feel the earth beneath your feet, the air on your skin, the miracle of being alive. Work is not just a task to complete, but a chance to serve, to contribute, to bring presence into the world. Awakening is also how we meet suffering. Instead of collapsing under pain or fleeing from it, we sit with it, breathe with it, learn from it. We stop firing the second arrow. We let suffering be a teacher, not an enemy. This changes the texture of life. Difficulties still arise, but they no longer drown us. Joy still fades, but it no longer devastates us. We walk with equanimity, steady in the river of change. Awakening is how we love. Instead of clinging, we offer compassion without chains. Instead of demanding, we give freely. Instead of fearing loss, we cherish presence. Love becomes spacious, tender, and fearless. It is no longer about possession, but about connection. Awakening is also how we see ourselves. Instead of clinging to a rigid identity, successful or failing, worthy or unworthy, we see the emptiness of self. We are not fixed, not trapped, not limited. We are rivers, flowing and changing. This frees us from the prison of self-judgment. It allows us to grow with kindness, to fail with humility, to rise again with courage. Modern life often sells awakening as a product retreats. Books, courses promising instant enlightenment. But true awakening cannot be bought. It cannot be packaged. It is not a possession. It is a practice, a path, a way of walking. It grows slowly, like a tree, through daily presence and steady care. Awakening does not make life perfect. Bills still arrive. Illness still comes. Loved ones still leave. But awakening changes how we meet these realities. Instead of drowning in fear, we breathe. Instead of clinging to illusions, we release. Instead of closing our hearts, we open them wider. Awakening does not remove the waves, but it teaches us to surf. Think of a candle in a dark room. The darkness remains, but the light transforms it. You can see, you can move, you can live with clarity. Awakening is that candle. It does not erase the world's suffering, but it illuminates a way to live within it steadily, compassionately, wisely. This way of living is contagious. When one person walks with awareness, it inspires others. When one person loves with compassion, it softens hearts around them. Awakening ripples outward, not through preaching, but through presence. A calm word in the midst of conflict. A gentle smile in a harsh world. A quiet act of generosity. These are the expressions of enlightenment in daily life. And perhaps the greatest truth is this: awakening is never finished. It is not a trophy to win or a status to claim. It is alive, unfolding, deepening. Each day is an invitation to awaken again, to breathe, to notice, to love, to release. Awakening is not a destination. It is the path itself. To awaken as a way of living is to weave wisdom and compassion into the fabric of ordinary days. It is not about leaving behind work, family, or responsibility. It is about infusing them with presence. Awakening does not remove you from life. It roots you more deeply in it. You still answer emails, pay bills, raise children, and care for aging parents. But you do these things with awareness, with kindness, with steadiness. Each task becomes sacred because each task is lived fully. This path is not dramatic. It is not about glowing halos or mystical powers. It is about small choices made again and again. Choosing to pause before reacting in anger. Choosing to breathe in the middle of stress. Choosing to listen with an open heart. Choosing to forgive when it is easier to resent. Awakening is these choices, repeated until they become the rhythm of your life. And though awakening grows in small steps, its impact is vast. It changes the atmosphere of your home, your workplace, your community. People feel it. They may not know the word for it, but they notice your calm in chaos, your kindness in conflict, your presence in distraction. Awakening becomes a gift, not just for you, but for everyone you touch. This way of living also changes how we see death. Most people fear death as the end, the great loss. But when you live awake, you see death as part of the flow. You no longer cling to life as a possession to hoard. You live each day fully, so when the end comes, you can release with peace. Death is not failure. It is transition. Awakening makes it possible to meet death with the same openness as life. There is a story of a Zen master who, at the end of his life, was asked by his students, "Master, what is your final teaching?" He smiled and said, Life is like this. And he took his last breath. His teaching was simple. Awakening is not about something beyond life. It is about life itself. This moment, just as it is, lived with awareness and compassion. That is the teaching. Awakening also changes how we see success. The world often defines success by wealth, status, and achievement. But awakening redefines success as presence, compassion, and peace of heart. A person who treats others with kindness is successful. A person who meets suffering with steadiness is successful. A person who dies without regret is successful. This success is not fragile because it does not depend on external conditions. It grows from within. The awakened way of living also heals division. When you see emptiness and interconnection, you stop drawing hard lines between us and them. You stop clinging to rigid identities of race, religion, politics, or nationality. You see that all beings seek happiness, all beings fear suffering, all beings are part of the same web. This dissolves hatred and awakens compassion across every boundary. Awakening is not only personal, it is social, collective, global. And yet, awakening remains humble. It does not announce itself, does not demand recognition. It is the quiet presence of a grandmother who listens deeply, the gentle strength of a father who forgives, the patience of a teacher who encourages, the kindness of a stranger who helps. These are not headlines, but they are the true markers of awakening. So how do we practice this way of living? Begin where you are. Notice your breath when you wake. Offer gratitude for your meal. Pause before speaking. Smile at the person before you. Forgive yourself when you stumble. Each of these is awakening. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Life itself is the perfect condition. And remember, awakening is not all or nothing. You do not need to be flawless. You will still feel anger, sadness, fear. You will still forget, still stumble. But each time you return to awareness, each time you choose compassion, each time you release clinging, you awaken again. This is the path. Falling and returning, forgetting and remembering, closing and opening. This is why awakening is called a practice. It is not about being perfect. It is about practicing presence, compassion, and freedom in the middle of imperfection. It is about walking steadily, even if slowly, toward greater clarity and love. And so, as we close this teaching, let us remember, awakening is not somewhere else. It is not later. It is not reserved for saints or monks or mystics. It is here now, in this breath, in this step, in this choice. Awakening is a way of living. It is the candle you light in the dark. It is the river you flow with instead of against. It is the love you offer without chains. It is the balance you hold on the rope of life. It is the freedom you find in suffering, the emptiness that reveals fullness, the compassion that connects all. Awakening is the journey and the destination, the path and the walking, the question and the answer. It is life itself, lived with open eyes and open heart. We have walked a long path together. From the restless stress of modern life, through the struggles with money, relationships, anxiety, and loss, to the deep wisdom of balance, compassion, suffering, emptiness, and awakening. Along the way, we have seen that the pains we carry are not unique to us, they are the human condition. And we have seen that within each pain lies a doorway to freedom. The Buddha's teachings are not ancient relics meant for monks in distant monasteries. They are living truths, practical tools for daily life. They speak to the worker in an office, the parent at home, the student overwhelmed with fear, the elder facing change. They remind us that peace is not found by running away from life, but by living it with awareness, compassion, and wisdom. Stress does not need to drown us. Money does not need to chain us. Relationships do not need to suffocate us. Anxiety does not need to define us. Even suffering itself does not need to destroy us. Every moment, every breath, every choice can become a step on the path to freedom. The teachings of mindfulness, non-striving, balance, compassion, and emptiness are not lofty ideals. They are doorways we can open every day. Perhaps the most important truth is this: you do not need to wait. Awakening is not a far-off destination. It is not reserved for saints or masters. It begins here, now, in this very moment. When you breathe with awareness, you awaken. When you forgive, you awaken. When you release clinging, you awaken. When you love without chains, you awaken, and awakening spreads. Your peace ripples into your family, your community, your world. A single candle can light 1,000 others without losing its flame. In the same way, your presence can awaken light in others. This is how the world changes, not through grand speeches or perfect leaders, but through ordinary people living awake, with open hearts. So as we close, carry this with you. Life will still bring storms. The cup will still break. The waves will still rise. But you no longer need to fear them. You have seen the truth. Within every storm, there is a lesson. Within every wave, there is the ocean. Within every ending, there is a beginning. You have within you the strength to meet it all with steadiness, compassion, and joy. Let this not be the end, but the beginning. Each morning, awaken again. Each breath, awaken again. Each step, awaken again. The path is here. The door is open. The journey is yours to walk. May you live with presence. May you love with freedom. May you awaken again and again in the heart of this very life.